I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Ron Anisich. I am the co-chair of the Raise the Rates Coalition. I'm also an ODSP recipient and a member of the ODSP Action Coalition. The Raise the Rates Coalition is a broad coalition working across all of Ontario. That work and the work of our member organizations takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across land governed by 46 treaties and agreements. Recognizing and respecting the long-standing history of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and their continued presence and contribution to communities across Ontario is essential to dismantling ongoing colonialism and the oppressive systems that establish and further and entrench colonialism. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the people at CUPE who are helping with the technical facilitation of this event, including Rob Murdoch, who will be helping out with the Q&A portion a little bit later on. We're also grateful to our French language translators. We also acknowledge the invaluable contributions of our steering committee, whose members have been meeting for the past year to get us to this point. And in particular, as they're here, Chiara Podovani was the driving force to getting this iteration of the Raise the Rates Coalition together. And we are extremely grateful to her for making that happen. And of course, we thank all of you for making time on this, what is where I live, a pretty gorgeous summer Saturday afternoon. We're glad you could be here, and we will try to respect your time by keeping this as brief as possible, while also allowing for any questions or specific areas of focus that you might have. To that end, we invite you to submit questions via the Q&A function, and we'll do our best to address as many of those as possible after we hear from a few speakers. In addition to myself, we'll hear from my co-chair, Rod Billard, who is a frontline Ontario Works worker in Southwest Ontario, CUPE Ontario President Fred Hahn, and Andrea Hatala, who is co-chair of the ODSP Action Coalition, a member of the Raise the Rates Steering Committee, and like me, is also an ODSP recipient. First, I'd like to introduce the other co-chair of the Raise the Rates Coalition, Rod Billard, who's going to talk a little bit about our coalition and some of our guiding principles. If you're ready, Rod.
Sure. As Ron has stated, we've been working hard for the past year to get to this point, because what we believe in is that we're fighting for people that are living on social assistance have been legislated into poverty, housing insecurity, and hunger. And this is a choice, this is a crisis that people in power have made, and it's time for us to change that. Social assistance recipients, social workers, grassroots organizations, anti-poverty advocates, and organized labor have come together to advocate for a more just, equitable, and caring society. We have one singular demand, and that's to at least double OW and ODSP rates and commit to an ongoing cost of living increase. We live in the wealthiest province of and one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but yet people are struggling around us. We are trying to provide everyone in Ontario with enough to live with dignity. And the Raise the Rates campaign is a grassroots anti-poverty effort to mobilize and a movement to force the government to live up to its promise. We always hear that the government is going to raise rates and do everything, but as we have seen, the rates have not increased enough for people to survive in this province. Our coalition is organized by like legal clinics, unions, food banks, and anti-poverty advocates. And we are open to having more allies to join our coalition to bring a bigger impact and make, as we fight for this. Like I said, we want to make space for on our coalition for people who are activists, as well as people who are paid staff to try and get the movement going across all of the 47 DSMs and CSSMs to try and get people involved with getting the Raise the Rates Coalition uh, first and foremost on the government's agenda when they start back in October. One of the things that we believe in is that poverty is neither a character flaw or a choice. All Ontarians deserve enough to live on and the means of funding all benefits to everyone on the social assistance. And making discretionary benefits easily accessible and eliminating wait times and means testing. People should not be kept in poverty trap or punished for working by the welfare wall. That means that we deserve the entire social assistance income without deductions and punitive clawbacks. Barriers to accessing supports are numerous and have been intentionally erected by the system. So as we are working with raising the rates, we're also working with the other anti-poverty organizations, such as the ones that Ron and Andrea are sitting on, to help with them to work with the government to try and reduce some of the things that are stopping people from getting assistance that they need. And I think that is all that I have to say. Other than we've been working hard to get to the point of getting this organization or this coalition underway to, with the support of all the food banks in the Toronto area, some in the north. We want to get the entire province involved with this so that people that are receiving social assistance can live a better life. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Rod. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the political situation in the province and why we think now is the time to move our demand forward. First, the bad news. We cannot underestimate the effects of inadequate Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program rates. The media has been reporting recently that the Ontario government believes that there are now 250,000 homeless people in this province. Municipalities report more than 1,400 encampments. Waiting lists for social housing exceed a decade in some communities. In Toronto, where I live, it's well over that. Social assistance recipients now make up the majority of regular users of food banks. And this is particularly troublesome during a week when our media is reporting that people are being turned away from Ontario food banks because some of them have run out of food. It's clear that our social safety net has completely failed, and that makes this an urgent issue for all working people. It's also equally clear, unfortunately, that the current provincial government has no plan to raise social assistance rates at all. A few years back, when I was first presented with the ask to double social assistance rates, I believed it was a position that few would get behind, regardless of the necessity. But since that time, we've heard calls from food banks and the legal clinic system, disability activists, organized labor, and others who support this goal. Since that time, the Provincial Green Party and NDP have both presented motions in Parliament to double social assistance rates. Bonnie Crombie recently became the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party after promising to double ODSP rates. More recently, municipal councils from across the province have passed motions and written to the provincial government to insist that social assistance rates, in their language, be at least doubled. We also heard the voices of many mainstream organizations and charities like local chapters of the United Way and YWCA, who also support doubling social assistance rates. The reason we have chosen our demand to at least double OW and ODSP rates is because we believe that now there is broad public and political support for this essential change. We believe that this is more achievable now than ever, and that is the good news, by the way. At least doubling OW and ODSP rates will not solve all of the issues with these programs, but we believe that it would reduce homelessness, reduce food insecurity, and alleviate suffering in communities right across this province. We can provide greater dignity for the 1 million social assistance recipients in Ontario. One more thing, I'm just gonna grab some water. One more thing, Doug Ford says that he's happy to take care of unhealthy people, which he's not doing, by the way. As an ODSP recipient, I'm here to tell you that that is not happening. But he says that people in Ontario Works are healthy, and that it drives him crazy that recipients are just sitting at home collecting your money when they should be working. We know that almost half of ODSP applications are rejected, in large part due to the fact that many people in Ontario do not have a family doctor to fill out the application forms. These people are forced to get by on OW despite their medical issues, so many of those people are not healthy. And I'd also question the intelligence of anyone who thinks that someone can be healthy when their income is $733 a month. And if that OW recipient is homeless, that amount becomes $343 a month. Of course, we've got to compare this to the countless billions of dollars that our provincial government gives away to foreign corporations. A lot of people I know refer to this as a corporate welfare system, which, unlike our social assistance system, is not underfunded by over $3 billion. Our plan for the Raise the Rates Coalition is, rather than to work at cross purposes with existing organizations, to bring them together and maximize their potential by making connections between grassroots organizations and labor and other groups. We are calling for a week of action in October, which will run from Thanksgiving weekend until Parliament reopens after their absurdly long break on October 22nd. We think that local organizing should have a high degree of autonomy, and we see our coalition's role as a supportive one. We can provide printed materials, assistance with media releases, we can provide speakers for local events, and we can provide help with organizing if that's what's needed. We intend to amplify and support local organizing by making connections between different groups and organizations. We're also happy to sit down and present and discuss with any organization or group that would like that, especially over the next few months. We are also planning a media event and rally at Queen's Park during the week of action, and we're hoping to be able to provide everybody with an exact date for that as soon as possible, but we are looking at during that week or possibly the week that Parliament reopens. Additionally, we hope to expand our steering committee. This is open to any individual or organization who is ready to organize around our goals and are comfortable with our organizing principles. As you've already heard from Rod, our current committee is quite representative of the stakeholders, but there are specific areas where we hope to grow. For example, we've got participation from ODSP recipients and frontline OW workers, but we would very much like to have better representation from OW recipients and frontline ODSP workers. That's not to exclude anyone. We are open to everyone, but we recognize that we have some areas where improvement is desired. We also have a website with an e-petition and sign-up form to become more involved with our campaign to at least double social assistance rates. The website is now fully functional, and we're working to continue to make improvements there too. Feel free to visit. We'll be showing you that in a bit. The URL is raisethe-rates.ca. It's very easy to remember. So there's 3 ways that we'd like people to get involved. You can just sign up to find out more about what's going on, maybe hopefully near you. We would like people to organize. We can see just by the attendees that we have here that there are some very experienced organizers here. We're hoping to rely on that to move this whole thing forward. And as I mentioned, and Rob mentioned already, we're always looking to expand our steering committee as well. I think that I've gone on for plenty long enough. So next, I would like to introduce CUPE Ontario President Fred Hahn. Welcome, Fred.
Thanks so much for that, Ron. I really appreciate this, and I want to say hello to all the CUPE members who are on this webinar, but also all of you who joined today. I am really grateful to be here. I want to recognize and thank the leaders in our social services sector. You've heard from one of them already, but there are many others who have been historically for some time deeply supportive of this call to raise the rates. I was a member of the Social Services Workers Committee back in the day. It's because I worked with kids with disabilities, young people with disabilities, who, part of my job was when they reached the age of 21, helping to transition them into the system of ODSP. It is as a result of that work, as a result of hearing from my colleagues who worked directly in delivering particularly social assistance. I know it's called Ontario Works. I still like to call it something else. All that to say, I've heard directly from the people who are members of my union about delivering this work. I know how deeply they care about this issue, and they understand the challenges that are faced. It is clear to me that this is an issue for working people who are in unions. In fact, it ought to be an issue for the entire labor movement. And I say that because our movement is primarily concerned with social justice. There are those who say that poverty is a complex issue, but legislated poverty isn't. Access to basic needs like food and shelter, healthcare, clothing, these ought to be rights in a country as rich as ours. Current Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program rates are way below what is needed to afford these essentials. Doubling the rates would bring people closer to a standard of living that starts to respect human dignity. The UN recognizes that poverty is a barrier to accessing other rights, including the right to health, the right to education, the adequate standards of living. We know that over 90% of ODSP recipients are unable to work due to the fact that they're people living with disabilities. These individuals aren't just statistics. They're our neighbors. They're our family members. They're our friends. More than 50% of regular food bank usage are folks who are living on social assistance. I know this was stated earlier, it bears repeating. This isn't a temporary crisis. This is a systemic failure that traps people in poverty. And it's about time that all of us in Ontario were concerned ourselves with this. I know some people say, well, why should Ontario Works and ODSP be an issue for the labor movement? And again, I want to answer that fair wages and social justice are interconnected. Without an even playing field, we see time and time again how the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. In CUPE, and there are other unions who feel this way as well, we see our role in supporting our members. That doesn't end at the workplace door. It is about, because their workplace is in a community, their community is interconnected with others. All of us, if we talk to one another, will discover that we've had family members, neighbors, others who have been or who may just have started things like ODSP or have been on social assistance. I know my family in the 80s, if without adequate social assistance in those days, we would not have been able to survive after my father lost his job in the mid-50s as a non-unionized construction worker. But the truth of the matter, particularly for social service workers in CUPE, is that all of us are trained in a caring profession. We're trained to help people. And then folks who start working in social assistance in OW realize that their workloads, that the policies implemented in the system, that the oversight over them that makes them more like benefit police than actual social workers, it frustrates a connection between recipients and workers, and that helps no one. We need to work together. The more of us working together, the more chance we have to make a real change. Look, after COVID, we know all of us have been battling record inflation. The reality is stark. Our members who are working are 20% below today. Their earning power is worth 20% less than it was just a few years ago. Plummeting purchasing power is disproportionately impacting people on OW and ODSP, especially those on OW who have a maximum benefit rate frozen since 2018, before the pandemic, at $733 a month. Some of us are experiencing COVID catch-up. Ford's wealthy friends have exploited inflation. They've driven up costs for groceries and for rent, for other essentials. Many of our locals workers are fighting back, and many of us are able to make some adjustments. We are still fighting to win, but we cannot leave our neighbors and others behind. Poverty has real human costs. Social assistance recipients are receiving 60% of what they would need just to be at the poverty line. Put that another way. They're more than 40% below the poverty line. Let's be clear, those rates force people to make impossible choices between food and shelter, between health and survival. It is a violation of human dignity. It is, in my opinion, a violation of their rights. Research shows that people living in poverty are at significantly higher risks for health issues, mental health issues, chronic illness. They have a lower life expectancy. This isn't just about numbers. I know I keep saying it, but it's important to remember these are real people. They're facing hardship every day. Our union is deeply committed to this work. This fight is not just about our members and their workload, although it is. How can a worker adequately think they can help people when they have hundreds of people on their caseload? But it is also about human rights, about ending a system of legislated poverty that has no space in our country, in a country like Canada. At our last CUPE Ontario convention, delegates from every sector unanimously passed a resolution calling on our union to strongly support the Raise the Rates campaign. It is something that we are committed to working with you and others on until we win. For those of you who are on this call who are from CUPE locals, I urge you, go back to your locals, impress upon your members the importance of joining this fight. To others in organized labor, also encourage you to go back and talk about why this is important. It is of critical importance to have a strong social safety net. Raising social assistance rates will have a profound impact on every community in Ontario. It will improve health outcomes. It will help to reduce homelessness. It will ensure that our most vulnerable are more protected than they are today. Remember, the strength of our communities is measured on how we treat the most vulnerable among us. Together we can, and we must do better. Now, you're going to hear more about this campaign. There is a petition that we want folks to sign. The reason in our union we were so keen on the idea of a petition is that we want to train people in our locals to go speak to their coworkers. The petition is the tool to have the conversation. Conversations face to face are what bring real change. We know this in our union. It's how we got 55 1,000 school board workers to go on an illegal strike against the four Conservatives. That didn't happen because we flipped a switch, or it didn't happen because somebody called for it. It happened because we had one-on-one conversations with people. That's what creates power. That's what creates change. I want to reiterate the demands here to double ODSP rates, to double Ontario Works rates. Now, the maximum OW payment, again, $733 a month. The shelter allowance is $390 a month. Of that $733. So for our neighbors who are living in tents in parks, they don't get that $390. In the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Ontario, not just Toronto, it's higher in Toronto. The average in Ontario is $2,500 a month, and yet people are being provided $390 for shelter allowance. It is more than 3 times the amount of OW's maximum. It is just not sustainable. It is just not humane. ODSP recipients' expenses are typically 30 to 40% higher than the general population because they are people living with disabilities. Their maximum shelter allowance is only $582 a month. Shelter allowances are obviously inadequate in markets where average one-bedroom apartments are $2,500. 30% of people who rent, who are tenants in Ontario, 30% of tenants are social assistance recipients. Most of them live in private market rentals. It is incredibly important that we do everything we can here to deal with these numbers, to tell people the reality of what's going on, to combat this dangerous and discriminatory attitude that people on OW are just sitting home and collecting a check. Trust me. Let's see how the premier could live on $733 a month. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? I'll stop. I've been going on for a long time. It's because this is such an important issue. I'm so glad and grateful to the leaders in our union who have ensured that our union is going to be part of it. I will do my part here as well as the president of our union, speaking to other unions through the Federation of Labor in other places. We got to bring as many people to the already significant numbers of people who are demanding that we double OW and ODSP, and we got to keep going until we win. Thank you.
And we will win. Thank you, Fred. Okay, I can see now that Andrea Hatala is ready to speak. She's a member of the ODSP Action Coalition, and she's also on the steering committee for the Raise the Rates Coalition.
If rates were doubled, poverty is a drag. It's a drag on society. It's a drag on the people that are in poverty. And it would mean that we could just it would dream more. It would mean that we could participate more in society. I mean, it would mean that we could not move out of Ontario housing or see the housing that we have and put money towards rent, and then maybe get a little bit extra when we are finished paying rent and bills, and just have that little bit extra to afford groceries or maybe afford new clothes instead of always having to get secondhand. It would mean that maybe we could put money towards education. When there was basic income pilot in Hamilton, people put money towards education and bettered themselves. they put money towards like new businesses and trying to lift themselves out of where they are. And poverty is a trap. This is a trap, like, because if you can't make it to the end of the month, then you have to, like, I can't make it to the end of the month. We have something in social assistance called a hell week, where we like just can't make it, where we have 1 week where we just have no money, and you are kind of desperate during that week, and you're thinking, like, it's not even the money, it's just the money, it's the desperation of having to survive for a week without any money, and wondering where your next meal is going to come from, and having to go to food banks, but the food that you get at food banks, only some of them are really good, and most of the time it's just cans and stuff. So yeah, and if we could double ODSP rates, we would, like, when one person wins, we all win, and when nobody is free until everybody is free, that's kind of a statement that's been used a bunch of times, but it's true, and it's true when it applies to poverty as well. And so, that's when another thing that I've always said is that when and so this would just give us a bit of a choice, and I don't see what the advantages are of keeping us trapped in this awful cycle of poverty with no way out. I don't see what the advantages are. And so if we could double socialism, get out of this mess. And a lot of us, it is true that we can't work. A lot of people feel that ODSP is feel that people on that are disabled are lying about their disability, but we're not lying. We've had doctors prove that we're not lying. It does, and disability shouldn't have to be a sentence of poverty and disability. So please, think about joining this campaign and helping us double the rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much. Excellent points, and almost everything you said also applies to Ontario Works, except more, sadly.
Yeah.
As ODSP recipients, we've all had some experience with OW on our way in, so we are somewhat cognizant of what that's all about. I'm gonna have to do some scrolling unless somebody has picked out a question they already want to answer.
I would just,
there is one that's aimed at Rod, and that is under the mistaken belief that you work in the ODSP system, I believe, and ODSP student interactions. Just to clear that up for the person who asked the question, Rod is in Ontario Works.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer to that question.
I can tell you what we know.
Okay, thanks, Ron.
That is that the Ontario government's gotten into the nasty habit of deducting student supports for students with disabilities from the Ontario Disability Support Program. That is against their own policy. And what's happened is people are having to start legal challenges in court in order to overcome something that shouldn't be happening anyway in many cases. And definitely one recent case, somebody decided to take this to court, and the government didn't send anyone to represent themselves. They know they can't win. It's something they're doing anyway in violation of their own policy. And groups like the ODSP Action Coalition have, we're not just about raising the rates. We have a bunch of, there are a wide array of concerns with the system. When you have a system with 800 or 1,000 regulations, they're not all going to be golden. We've got some serious issues with a lot of them. What we decided to do for this campaign, however, was leave that sort of stuff behind so that we can focus directly on our single goal of at least doubling ODSP rates. This is not to say that we're not interested in the other issues. We're going to keep working in our separate organizations to fight with those kind of issues. But what we want to do in this group is bring everybody together who wants to double ODSP and OW rates, and have all the organizing done under one tent.
There's one there that how can we get resolutions like CUPE in front of our unions? I'm not sure which union. I'm thinking it's Unifor, but I believe Fred can probably speak on that, if that's okay.
Absolutely. I did put this in the chat, but we can share the resolution that was submitted to our convention in CUPE Ontario, and then others can use that in other unions and locals as like a model that you could, amend and tweak, but use as a way to, to bring this issue forward, so that you can have this discussion in your local and in your union. So we'll share that. We can share it with the coalition, so we could even put it on the coalition page somewhere. We can make sure that it's available on the CUPE Ontario website under the social services kind of area. We can make sure that it's available for people to see. And I did also see there was a question about national organizations. And I would just say that national organizations will have often, wings or parts of them that exist in the different regions. Sometimes people think this, right? Well, I'm a national organization. I can't really be involved in that provincial issue. And I would just say, think about the ways in which the advocacy you do at the national level is connected to this issue. Lots of national organizations, I think this was a women's law organization, the way in which this, impacts women, particularly women raising children, is devastating. So I'm sure there are ways that connects to the mandate of your organization, and adding your voice as a national organization would only help the campaign. So please encourage and find ways to do that.
I'd like to add something to that, and that is that if you're in a national organization, we do welcome your participation, and we realize that Ontario is not a vacuum. We're not the only place in Canada where social assistance rates are not survivable. And we believe that having success in this campaign could potentially have a knock-on effect for other provinces as well. We don't think that the rest of the provinces are going to look at Ontario once we double our social assistance rates and go, no, we don't want any part of that. What we think will more likely happen is that, oh, yes, that's what we should do, and make this something that can help out across the country. When we were learning about when we were at the hearings for the Canada Disability Benefit, that is one of the striking takeaways that we had. Other than, you can't trust a Liberal to deliver on a promise, we also learned that there are organizations across the whole country that are fighting for the same kinds of social justice that we are here. So we can make those connections with the provincial wing of your organization if you have one. If you don't, you're still welcome. But it's almost essential for groups in other provinces, if you can, or if you have the capacity to help out on this, because it will have that knock-on effect. The same way workers going on strike raise wages for everyone. That's what's going to happen here too.
Yeah, there's a question about what are the action outlets? Is there a public outreach plan of actions? Ron had discussed some of that we are looking at a week of action. I was going to share the webpage, so I'll give that a quick share right now. Hopefully everyone can see that webpage. Just going to move that. Well, as you can see, we have our campaign launch, but right here there is a sign the petition. With this petition, that will go to your local MPP, sorry, also to the minister and to the premier as well. So that is one way that we are getting information and like getting it out to the public. So this is our webpage of raisetherates.ca. So you can also join our campaign by just signing up, and we will get your email information, and we will get you involved. And hopefully we can get, if you're not able to attend in Toronto at Queen's Park, that we are trying to get days of action across the province at your local MPP's office. So hopefully we can get more information out to people once they've signed up and get this information for our public demands and things like that.
We're also hoping that, some of the, we're hoping to be able to support autonomous organizing. We know that we've gotten to this point in our campaign through the difficult work that a lot of different organizations have been doing over the past couple of years. This isn't something that's coming out of the blue. There are organizations outside and inside our steering committee that have worked really hard to get these issues to the point that we're at now. Now, what we want to do is be able to assist people and amplify local organizing where that's going on. And in some cases, we're going to be able to lead by example. For example, the ODSP Action Coalition that Andrea and I are part of are working with Disability Justice Network of Ontario, and we'll be organizing an event in Hamilton during the Week of Action. The main thing is that now that we have the time to concentrate our efforts on, we're hoping that people will take this up where they live. And whether it's an action like leafleting or having a small rally outside of your MP's office or whatever it is, we want to be there to amplify and support these things in addition to what we're planning on doing ourselves. The problem is that we're in Toronto, and a lot of people who support this campaign are not going to be in Toronto. So it's a question of logistics, and we're going to do our best to keep everybody on the same page and working together instead of at cross purposes. And having the focus of a week of action, we think, is a step in the right direction there. We hope we've answered that question. I was going to say, given that we're like 4 minutes away from the end of what we hoped we would be able to get over in an hour, I will tell people that if they have questions, we have a website. We have our email address is easy to find there. If you are interested in organizing, then please, by all means, reach out to us. And if you need our help, we're happy to do whatever we can do to help you. We'll also be keeping you up to date with other people's actions through the mailing list. What I want to do now is introduce Rod, my co-chair, again for a few concluding remarks.
Yes. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their Saturday afternoon and joining us. As I said when I was answering some questions, please, oh, I think my page went away. There it is. Please join and sign our petition for Raise the Rates. This will get the message out to our premier that people in Ontario want to see justice for people that are living on social assistance, to help better their quality of life, to provide adequate housing, and stability in their lives. So doubling the rates. Please sign and subscribe to our webpage. That is first and foremost on getting this campaign launched, and getting the information out there that we are here and we are fighting for justice for people that are on receipt of social assistance. Again, I just want to thank you again for joining us, and thank you to our speakers, Fred, Andrea. And we lost Andrea again, but I want to thank Andrea and Ron. So hope everybody has a great day, and we look forward to working with you on this campaign.